Bienvenidos, bienvenidas a Diálogos, Episode 3. I'm Gabriela Watson-Burkett, your co-host.
And I'm Vicky Diaz-Camacho, your other co-host. Let's delve into the top headlines.
Adolescent homelessness is on the rise, and a lot of programs can be cut. Can you share us what you find?
Absolutely. So advocates for city homelessness services are sounding the alarm because the city's school district plans to cut funding for students and critical services that would support them. David Fair, a leader with Turning Points, a social and health services organization, said $2.5 million in investments is on the chopping block, which helps unhoused students. And think about it this way, the district itself says that it supports 10,000 students who experience homelessness. So that's a lot of kids without the help they need.
The White House is continuing to examine which programs are going to be cut, and some of the programs that are at risk right now, we're talking about the Affordable Care Act and the Medicaid, which can impact a lot of families and children, especially in the state that we live on in Pennsylvania.
So when we're looking at this in the context of Pennsylvania, 23% of Pennsylvanians are covered by Medicaid. And health policy experts are saying that a lot is at stake if they cut $880 billion from the budget over the next decade. So that's not just looking at the cuts right now, it's over the next 10 years. The issues that this presents is it's going to further widen health access issues. So health navigator programs, which help people apply for Medicaid or apply for SNAP, those are at risk of being kind of dissolved, which is a big, big problem. The other amendments would be adding barriers to even getting health insurance, which means they would have to show that they're working in order to even get benefits. So that's another suggested amendment. And the AP reported that cuts to aid would jeopardize care for nearly 80 million people who rely on this to get health care. More than half of Pennsylvanians on SNAP are families with children. So these are kids who would go without meals, potentially. And we also know that food banks right now are not getting the support that they need, and that those programs are also being rolled back. And we know of one here in Philadelphia. So we'll have to keep an eye on that.
Absolutely.
So presently, we actually know that civil rights and immigration advocates and lawyers are concerned about an increased wave of deportations, specifically targeting non-resident students who were vocal or had written op-eds about pro-Palestinian advocacy. So this is raising concerns not only about their stability and their status, but also about the precedent that arrests like this set, because it violates our free speech protections under the U.S. Constitution. So that's a big concern.
It really is, because it's going from, first they mentioned that they were going after criminals, now they're going after legal residents that have green cards. So what's next?
We don't know.
Yes. Just like the Billy Penn reports that was saying immigrants should stay, but they need to be prepared for what can possibly come. It's really concerning, but we are at that point.
Right. And we'll continue to update resources for the community however we can.
So there's some good news, however, Nikki, is that the Pennsylvania House Democrats passed a bill in late March that makes the Affordable Care Act state law if it is repealed at federal level. So we're hoping that families in the community is still going to be secure. Following the good news, Vicky, is that the Maria de los Santos Health Center in North Philly is offering CPR classes in Spanish. They have a new kiosk that the community can go and have this information. So CBS reported that. We ask for our audience, if they want to have more information, just check out the organization.
Here's some good news that actually pertains to fellow co-host Gabriela. She recently took part in a new program that invests in Latino news leaders. Tell us more about the NAHJ Adelante Fellowship and your experiences so far.
So yes, Vicky, I'm very excited to be part of the 2025 cohort of the Leadership Academy from the Hispanic Journalists Association. And we just had a week of training in New York. I'm excited also because it's a recognition for the work that we have been doing as a group We have a team of 12 folks who from different capacity who work really hard, who dedicate their times and energy and creativity. So I'm so happy that we are part of this team.
We're building it together.
In the next segment, we're going to take a look into this month's hot topic.
Yeah, we're going to talk about what restorative justice is and what that means. In the studio with us today are McKayla Warwick and Kwaku Owusu, the co-founders of Collective Climb, a restorative justice-focused project serving and supporting young people of color who are 15 to 19 years old. Their program, founded in 2020, includes the Restorative Justice Diversion Program, Youth Advisory Board, and Restorative Community Project.
So one of our guests, McKayla, she is a graduate from University of Pennsylvania, where she has a degree in sociology, urban studies, and Africana studies. She is one of the co-founders of this organization who really focus on helping the youth to heal from interpersonal and intergenerational harm.
Our other co-founder, Kwaku, is the finance director of Collective Climb. He has a degree in economics from the University of Pennsylvania, and he says this organization is a love letter to the city which nurtured him, using restorative justice practices to promote Black joy, security, and freedom for youth and their communities in Philly. So glad to have you here. So, McKayla, let's start with you.
Right.
What is the origin story of this project? And Kwaku, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, it's definitely a back and forth kind of story. So both of our bios talked about the fact that we went to the University of Pennsylvania and we were kind of in different worlds, different orbits. But I remember one day I just decided to check Facebook because back in 2019 we were still occasionally checking Facebook, and Kwaku had sent me a message on Messenger, and he was basically asking if I wanted to get dinner in one of the dining halls with him and a friend, Hungtae. And it was pertaining to the President's Engagement Prize. And that is a prize for seniors at Penn who are interested in doing a social venture or some sort of project that is about community service or tending to a specific problem for a specific population. And independently, I was telling myself, should I apply? Should I not apply? So the message was super duper timely. And I was like, sure. So we gathered over food, which kind of is a recurring story
Love it.
for Collective Climb, actually. And they started telling me about this idea that they had. Now, I'll admit, it looked a little bit different than what it ended up being that we proposed and also what it ended up being that we do today.
Cool.
But it was just a collaborative conversation and really sparks were flying and we realized, like, we're a trio.
Like when we were making this organization, McKayla talked about doing, we went to some schools and we did pilot programming. We did a whole door-to-door for like 2 months. So
Yeah.
like we were out in West Philly from like 40th out to 52nd, from like Baltimore and then up to like Market. And just like knocking at doors asking like, hey, we're your neighbors. What are your thoughts on restorative justice?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like how youth are dealt with when they're in the criminal justice system?
Right.
Do you think we started doing, or we're proposing doing a restorative justice diversion program, which we do now, and we're glad to talk about it. But we're asking like, what do you think about a restorative justice diversion program? So that's like when youth get arrested for even up to a felony, we divert them out of the traditional criminal justice system into a community accountability process. So we really spent so much time,
Wow.
a lot of time. It was almost like 6 months, I'd say, just
Wow.
information gathering, building community, and authentically showing up for individuals.
Right.
So that when we started our program, it wasn't like we're just a bunch of Penn grads, like saying we have this idea, we're going to do this idea. I think even though me and McKayla are both Black, and like we fit in with the people in West Philly because we're Black individuals, there can be that distrust, especially if you're coming from Penn. So I think that's something that we navigated with respect and humility, where, look, I understand a lot of you might not have a great relationship with the university because of like the nature of students coming in and out, programs saying that they're going to help, but only using you for opportunity. We're here, we're planning on staying. I mean, 5 years in, we're still here, and I'm not going anywhere, at least right now. Like, we're locked in.
I have two questions. First, the name. Why did you decided on Collective Climb. And also on your Instagram, we can see is a Black feminist organization description. I want to know why that approach.
Yeah, so we were in one of our many whiteboarding sessions. We were like, okay, cool, we got to come up with a good name. Like we'd already proposed, we had some ideas of the basic thing. We were like, oh, like cool, like let's toss in a Khan proverb because I'm a Khan and people love a good proverb. And then we came up with one proverb that basically says, you like, if you climb a good tree, we push you. So trees, if you see like on our website, which is going to be updated, has like a lot of tree imagery, a lot of climb, but it's this idea of like when you're in community with each other and you're supported and you support others, like we all lift up. It's like this collective uplift that we have. So we just were like trees, climbing, good tree, collective, group, collective. And then eventually we just landed on collective climb because it has that like consonants of the collective climb, like the double C sound.
Alliteration.
Yeah, like it just
like.
hit. It hit exactly how we needed it to.
But yes, to being a Black feminist organization, I think we owe so much of what we do to Black feminist thinkers, writers, and scholars who are just thinking about liberation and imagining it creatively and thinking about what does it look like to cultivate a new world? Yeah. What does it look like to not get so caught up in the status quo of how things are done, which might be rooted in competition, which might be rooted in a scarcity mindset, which might be rooted in the fact that love is not at the center, and we wanted to really commit to those values, shaping how we engage with youth. So while we do have some programming that is explicitly for Black girls and femmes, we also work with everybody of all gender identities and expressions, and for that reason, like we can engage with a young Philly bull and still be like, we are a Black feminist organization, and that young person, he can feel that, he can understand that, and then hopefully over time he's able to see he's got a responsibility to be a Black feminist too, and imagining what does it look like to be free, right? What does it look like to free others, to love others, to be emotive and expressive? So we're just really big on that as a grounding philosophy. And I want to shout out our co-founder who is getting his PhD on the West Coast, Hung Tae, who was also a huge proponent. And we don't keep that as our internal value. We make that explicit, we make that known, and we write that we are Black feminists anytime we come to the page.
Well, I was just curious if, this project, this movement, I would say, is it rooted in something personal for you, for each of you?
There are a few different personal things that I go back to. One is that I was raised by older folks. So my dad, he's 72 now, right? I'm 27, so you can kind of do the math there. And he comes from a family of 11 siblings. Wow. And he had 7 sisters. He has 7 sisters, excuse me. Not all of them are here with us today, but growing up, they were all a part of my story so deeply. And my Aunt Barbara Jean, I would spend weekends with her, and she had all the cousins over her house all the time, all the neighborhood youth, and she also was an organizer. She was throwing the cookouts, the block parties, the Christmas event, the bingo nights, selling hot plates, giving away hot plates, and also resolving conflict in her living room. I'll never forget going over and being like, where am I gonna sleep? Because there were 10 people sleeping on her concrete floor with blankets and pillows, but if you needed a place to go, she was there for you. If you had nowhere else where people were rocking with you, she gave you that space. And while I didn't know she was a restorative practitioner, and I'm not sure she thought she was either. Just bearing witness to that kind of shaped how I view community and how I view being around people. And then carceral impact on my family, particularly of young people, people who I grew up with. We were so close growing up, and, being young, being Black, being stigmatized, being perceived as a criminal as young as 10 and 11 kind of shapes how you navigate the world. And so one of the people I was closest to growing up is still locked up to this day. And he was definitely a part of those times at my Aunt Barb's house, and love him to pieces. And he may not know, I told him a few times, but I'll say it again publicly. Part of the reason I do this work is how I felt when I was 15. and heard the news and didn't know what was possible and what could be done. And today I feel like I do restorative justice work as a way to say there are pathways, there are approaches.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I really resonate with a lot of what McKayla said, and I grew up from a family of West African immigrants from Ghana, and we didn't come from that much, and I spent a lot of my time growing up in an apartment complex in New York. I grew up on Long Island in like one of the suburbs, but just like even if my parents weren't home, I knew I was going to be taken care of. Like it was such a vibrant community in just like smaller than in a little acre of territory in this little complex. Like we had Mr. Larry, who was always like going to catch fish in like the Great South Bay and like would come back with crabs and be like, we're cooking crabs. There would be so many moms, aunts that I just come home, they'd be like, give me a kiss. I'd be like, no, I don't want to give you a kiss. But then they like chase me around. There's just like so much play and joy. And none of us, well, a few of us were blood related. Like my cousins lived across the street, but like there was so much bonding and there was so much connection, even though we weren't family, but there was this sort of understanding based on our identities, based on where we were living, based on where we were coming up, that we got us. Like we understand us, we got us, we don't need anybody else. So I think in terms of building community, that's just something that's been very natural to me growing up and something that I've understood deeply as something that takes time, and it's sort of bonded by identity, even though others can come in and come out of it. So I feel like that has been sort of my mindset and grounding about like how to organize, how to be present for each other, how to show up. If like my neighbor needs something, like cool, they can text me and ask for it. No need to call the police if there's a mental health crisis, like because I have a relationship with you. So I think I was taught from a very young age how to be close with others in a way that has integrity. And then also very similarly growing up with like family members with conflict, I think often I grew up a lot of time with my grandma, who was like the chief mediator. If there was any problems between me and my sister, me and my brother, me or my cousins, somebody comes over, gets the last piece of toast or eats the last like bit of food, and I'm like about to crash out at age 5. She'd be like, no, stop. And then she'd sit us down and we'd be able to talk through. But I think there's something about like the it takes a village to raise people. I love my parents too, and they were always there and present and being able to like help take care of me, but they wouldn't have been able to do it by themselves because they worked for so much. So I think like I just throughout my life, there have been so many people who poured into me that weren't necessarily my nuclear family, which is the only reason why I'm still here today. And I think similarly, I have had a lot of friends and a lot of like lives lost either through like death or imprisonment through the carceral system. And they were young, they were high schoolers. It's just a simple mistake. There were all these factors that maybe led to one incident. And there's no reason why youth should lose their future, lose their life over that. So I have like a very deep connection to especially Black youth who are told that they're not worth it and told that they don't deserve to live. So it's something that I hold so deeply and so sacredly, which is why I'm doing this work.
Now, we'd love to dive deep a little bit more into like what are the projects that you guys develop.
We have another program, which is our Restorative Justice Diversion Program. And we're really big on youth leadership there, too. So as youth complete the program, we always are trying to invite them back in paid capacities to be a part of creating an experience for another youth who's in a similar position, and being able to share their own story and being able to hold a healing and harm circle, or even just plan like cool events and ways for that young person to feel celebrated. So those are the ways we try to ensure youth are standing with us at the helm, at least.
When you're providing an avenue for them to kind of challenge the systems that exist currently so that they can create their own, right? Which is what we need to do. And what I'm sensing is like you are also incentivizing them building something new, which is really great. And it really resonated for me when you talked about, you know, the restorative justice piece with, you know, the youth who are incarcerated. And so I'd love for you to talk about how you pursue reconciliation and healing outside of the punitive system, and breaking it down on the impact that you've seen over the years.
So Kwaku mentioned we started with the community informing this program, and we had 90% of the community members we talked to, so that was 102 neighbors, and that was 30 businesses say we support alternatives to the justice system for youth. And 88% of them said, we like that restorative justice idea as well. And so we started by trying to go where we were, and that was with that connection to Penn and trying to see if we could get Penn, who has the third largest private police force in the country, to do diversion for youth that are arrested on campus.
Wow.
So instead of it going through the broader system, it could stop there and they could start with our program and never have to experience the carceral setting.
Okay.
And at first, that seemed like it was a viable approach. We were going to be able to do it. And then we started realizing we're getting the runaround. Kwaku also mentioning 2020. Penn Police was complicit in tear gassing people on 52nd Street. And that was also when some movements like Police Free Penn were sparking up, and we were in support. So we signed petitions and we were ready to figure this out. They took it some kind of way.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we were kind of punished, for not being the good, appreciative Penn students. And instead they were like, trying to almost make it seem like we could not work together. And the point was, we didn't want to work with you. We were trying to work against you because of the impact that those policies and approaches have had on the community.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, we were in restorative circle spaces, in the community spaces, and someone who works at the DA's office.
It's good to have somebody on the inside.
She thought that we had gotten our situation with Penn together. She thought we were actually a diversion program already. So one day she emails us a case, like our first conference for a young person, and we were like, do we clarify or do we accept? And we accepted. And it went really well.
Yeah.
And we were able to have that young person's case closed. And then at the end, she was like, I didn't realize we didn't have paperwork, but let's get that paperwork started. So, yeah. So in 2021, we became the second restorative justice diversion program in Philadelphia after Youth Arts Self-Empowerment Projects, Healing Futures. Shout out to them as well. They're great. And in that time, we've completed 70 cases. And we have had 4 young people of those 70 be rearrested, which is, I believe off the top of my head, like a 96% success rate, where young people are getting their cases closed and getting their records expunged.
Powerful.
And so it is one of the most successful programs that the city has ever seen for diversion, and we're really proud of that. I think we're a little humble in sharing our narrative on that. And, the reason, the why behind why we have those kind of numbers is that we look at each young person and each person harmed and each family as an individual. And we're trying to figure out, what is it that you need?
Yeah.
What is it that you are seeking? What are you also lacking? And how can we support you in that process? What does accountability look like? And I'm just asking questions because that's what a restorative facilitator does.
That's why. Yeah.
You just ask questions and allow that person to self-actualize and self-describe what it is that they need. And then we do the job of matching that need and meeting it, right? And I think it's a different philosophy in truly trusting people as opposed to building out a system and trying to make them fit into that system.
Right.
So I really think that's our secret sauce there.
Yeah.
To Kwaku's point earlier, we've grown very slowly. We've never been the type to say, okay, that went well with 5 youth, let's take on 25 at one time, because we're afraid that we won't be able to give that individualized attention. We won't be able to provide that care. So if someone calls me at 8 p.m. and there's a need, I want to be able to meet that,
That
so
makes sense.
that's kind of our philosophy in that approach.
Yeah, I think it's really hard when so many youth are in the state of crisis to be able to regulate yourself. Like, if you get arrested for burglary and it's because you stole a bunch of food from the grocery store, why are we punishing somebody for needing to eat? So I think an important intervention that we do in our program is we are able to help with holistic needs. So we've been able, at every session we do, we have food. We feed them well. If they need extra food, we got them. We help with transportation. Some people feel uncomfortable going on SEPTA or being in certain neighborhoods. So it's like, if you want to come to Center City and meet us in our space, we got you. We would go to people's houses before we had our office space. So McKayla would be like, I got a session in West Philly, but then I got to go to Northeast, and it'd be like in the span of, we were doing
Fox Chase era era
The
was
Fox
so
Chase.
complicated. I was like, getting on regional rail, but let's do it. Why
Yeah.
not?
It's doing the work.
So we help with transportation. If there are like housing or any emergency needs across the board, like if you see a youth in crisis or if they're arrested and they get charged or even pre-arrest, there's probably something either at home or in their lives that's really going wrong that needs help. So that could be lack of housing, that could be emergency needs, that could be need of clothing. So we have an emergency fund that we're able to help with any sort of like specialized need that's not food or transportation or something that's covered with the program. And that has been like really appreciated and really helpful for turning the tide for a lot of youth and their families in the program. So I think the important thing also that McKayla mentioned is like we bring in families in these circles. So some circles, we start every process with by bringing the parent or the guardian in the circle and talking them in and being like, this is an agreement between all parties, parent, youth, parent, guardian, youth, and us, the facilitators. Then as the process goes on, like we can bring in some friends for a session, which can sometimes be a little chaotic. But sometimes it's important to bring in like people who are important in their lives who are also youth. There's sometimes we bring in other community members, facilitators to do workshops and other programs. But I think it's such an important intervention because like in the name restorative, I think implies having the belief that community are there to surround you and protect you and be with you. So it's building the village. And like our goal is to build the village around the youth or repair the village or like create a whole new village of new people and new support. So
Absolutely.
it's a work that takes a lot of time. These processes can go anywhere from 2 to 6 months in a formal setting. And then there's still some relationships that are built and some supports that are needed outside of that 6-month range.
Wow. Wow.
So
Kudos.
inspiring. Yes, I'm sure you guys keep relationships that's lifelong lasting, right?
Absolutely.
I feel like I have like 10 kids. Yeah.
But that's fine. It's very beautiful work, and we were just highlighting Vicky and I how it's intergenerational approach.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So we appreciate that you brought in the family.
Thank you so
you know,
much.
So we wish you the best with that. Can you please share a message of hope for families, youth, and their communities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a big one because keeping hope is hard, even when our message is often about hope and possibility and freedom, joy, security. I think the number one thing is we have to be a village.
Yep.
Hope comes not alone in the middle of the night, but it comes when you are in social gatherings with people that you love and trust. So now is not the time to isolate. You know, this is the time to come together, share ideas, plan, and brainstorm about what are we going to do next? What are we going to do to take care of each other? And, you know, if you're interested in getting connected to Collective Climb, please do, and come to our space, and we can show you how our gathering location and approach is a vehicle for trying to share hope. Yeah.
Yeah, I think really emphasizing the fact that this is not the time to isolate. Uncertainty has always been a factor, even though it's heightened right now. We never really know our futures, but we can take those steps, and we must take those steps right now. And in addition to everything that McKayla said, I think this is a time for active working, because if we stay passive, the ops are going to get us. Like everybody who is targeting us is going to get us. That doesn't just mean work hard for yourself. That means work hard for your neighbors. Like if ICE is coming, we should all have a plan to know how we're going to support people in our communities. If trans rights are being affected and you have trans people in your community, how are we going to protect them? How are we going to affirm them if we can't do it through the ways that have already been there? For whatever identity that we have, now I think is a time to lock in, form those networks, and actively create hope. It's a practice. Hope is a practice. So it's hard and it's challenging, but we have no choice but to work. We have no choice but to be with other, in my eyes.
Beautifully said. I wanted to also bring to the fore a quote that I saw on the website that really stuck out to me. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's businesses. We are each other's magnitude and bond. By Gwendolyn Brooks and Paul Robeson. Thank you so much for being here. And that is a wrap for episode 3. Thank you for tuning in to Diálogos.
You can find the show on Spotify or YouTube, and make sure to support our work. Visit our website, intimedia.org.
And stay up to date on everything that we do by following us on social media at News by Inti Media.
Share.
Nos vemos.